What you see here is seamless character switching from Spider-Man to Miles Morales and then to Venom, and it looks absolutely insane. Now, credit to teaserplay on this video. The full link for it is in the description below, but he basically brings fans' visions to life by creating fan concepts as such. We have some info in this video that is going to bring a lot of things to light that is very much needed for this game. From this month possibly being a big month for this game, to Sony axing one of their events, and how Spider-Man 2 is supposedly officially to include and showcase character switching. If you could leave a like on this video, it helps a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. But if you get to the end of a video and it turns out you didn't actually find any value or straight up didn't like the video, then feel free to turn your like into a dislike. But if you could leave a like right now, it would help a ton. So Spider-Man 2 will clearly give you the option to play as Peter and Miles, of course both of which we've already experienced individually. Now, though it's not 100% confirmed, it is incredibly likely, but the other character people simply did not expect as an option to play as is, you guessed it, Venom. And well, with things floating around the internet, it too looks very much possible that, alone, just by itself in the endgame content, would be massive. That would be a complete game changer. Of course, if you're thinking in the single player story aspect of things, no, it doesn't make sense. But from a replayability standpoint and the endgame content as a whole, things can get very interesting with the character switching. Of course, this game will not be making an appearance at the Game Awards, and Sony is going to end 2022 technically without a major press conference. That does mean that this will also go down in history, because to my knowledge, it's actually the first time since the brand's inception that they just haven't actually hosted a major briefing at all with the organization. Now, what's crazy is this game, and this is kind of weird as well, because this game was actually snubbed in one of the categories at the Game Awards, where it basically isn't on the list for one of the most anticipated games next year, which is clearly false. Now, this is where things get very interesting, because what's crazy is since God of War's release, PlayStation actually has no exclusive games currently when I'm making this video that actually have a release date. With the most anticipated games in the Marvel field when it comes down to specifically Spider-Man 2 being in progress, as well as Wolverine, it really seems like they are holding their cards to their chest very closely. Now, just to clarify, when I say they're axing their major events, that's not including shorter live streams like the State of Play, or major events like Gamescom Opening Night Live or Summer Games Fest. What I'm referring to specifically is the briefings like last year's PlayStation Showcase or the historical E3 live streams. Now, this leads me to character switching in this game as a whole, because as I say, we've seen our first concept. But on top of that, what is also going around is the fact that God of War actually has companions that is a very good lesson for Marvel Spider-Man 2. So this news actually comes from Game Rant, and what I really want you guys to take into account is, before we go on in depth about this character switching, is that the concept that you see, of course, at the start of this video is very, very, very key, because with individuals like teaserplay who just made the most incredible concepts that you will ever see, it really does actually assist to see the demand for features in games and also help the developers see how they could potentially implement that, as well as reading comments on those videos and actually seeing people's suggestions. So really, with creators like teaserplay, I really think they're going to help the industry, specifically with the most anticipated games, helping the developers and ultimately getting the fan feedback to really give the features that we truly need to see. Now, as I say, how does this link to God of War, etc.? Well, according to Game Rant, seamless character switching is something that should actually be a priority for this game just to increase the adventure as a whole. Now, what they say specifically is, much like players will be in control of Atreus before becoming Kratos in ultimately a mid-scene, who has his own distinctive moveset, players should be able to switch between Peter and Miles very easily. This could happen even more consistently in Marvel Spider-Man 2, as Insomniac could basically let players switch between two heroes with the press of a single button, but being able to use basically Miles' ability in part of a fight only to switch over to Peter's side of a big battle, and that would just be spectacular. They then continue to say, like in God of War, the companion Spidey that tags along with players should actually have several more useful upgrades that have been acquired. So for example, if players unlock a skill when playing as Miles, the AI version of Miles should occasionally use it when he is tagging along with the player-controlled Peter, and some upgrades are exclusive to when the hero is AI controlled, just like in God of War, and it basically gave a companion with Ataras where he grabs Freya's flying attacks, etc., and they just ultimately said that stuff would be very welcome. Now, this is huge, and it could actually change a lot more than you think, simply because it's actually needed from a gameplay standpoint to begin with. Density in this game is also key, and I have no doubt that it will be vastly improved from the first game. But one thing where character switching and density tie into each other is with side missions. Now imagine web swinging as Peter, and you randomly need to help Miles with, let's just say, a bank robbery, for example. And then the character switching allows you to turn up to the side missions, and you could potentially just enter the buildings freely and tag team. Of course, one issue with the first Spider-Man game, at least from my opinion anyway, which I wasn't keen on, is when you did have the random side missions, I didn't really like the way the screen changed, and you technically couldn't actually go into the buildings, and it was ultimately like just a shop front. You never actually had that third player, I guess, actual experience like you were throughout the entire game. So that's something that I do genuinely want to see change as a whole in Spider-Man 2, and I think character switching as a whole would really take this to a next level. Now vice versa with the endgame content and having the ability to play as Venom and then do vice versa. So for example, this would really tie into the co-op aspect, and co-op in this game has already been found in the original game files, so it was actually very clear that the idea was a thing and then just completely scrapped. And of course at that point things got very, very interesting, because, well, ultimately it came down to, is it because of the console limitations or was it because of something else? So when we talk about character switching and we talk about the ability to play as Venom, etc., and we talk about side missions, considering how much players could be included in co-op, for example, is it just 2-player co-op, is it 4-player co-op, etc., then that's where things can get really interesting with having the playable characters like Miles and like, of course, Venom, and ultimately just the side missions that you would actually get as a whole. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section below. But this game had some very, very sad news that I actually think took a lot of people by surprise, but at the same time it showed that the photo realism in this game is going to be taken to a next level. You need to check that video out on screen right now.